Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Madison Realty Capital, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, AmTrust Title, Ariel Property Advisors, Dime Community Bank. Additional funding has been provided by AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Real Estate Organization, Handro Properties, Hodges Ward Elliott, Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Meringoff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Organization, Moynihan Capital Partners, and these friends.
Colorado, military, the Fighting Irish, Air Force, Heinz, Rockefeller Group. I have the president and CEO of the Rockefeller Group, Dan Moore. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You know, you have a history. I mean, this military history goes back to the Civil War. So tell us about the family going back, where they came from, and how the Civil War and everything took in.
Sure. So military service has been a big part of my family going back for a number of generations, both on my mother's side and on my father's side. A number of years ago, my great uncle, who I hadn't really ever met until we were at a funeral for my grandmother, we started up a conversation, and he started to talk about some research that his father had done in the 30s about his great grandmother. And eventually he followed up with a letter, and it was a letter with a photocopy of a document that was a application for pension benefits for the minor children of his great grandfather, who was in the Civil War, worked for, or was in a New York volunteer regiment, and was killed from injuries at the Battle of Fredericksburg in Virginia. And it was just,
so he was on the Yankee side, at least.
He was on the Yankee side. And it's just a fascinating document because little subtle things like the war is referred to as the War of 1861 because it was only 1863 when she filed for these benefits, and the concept of what the Civil War was hadn't really been written yet. Plus all of the language and the discussions of children and births and deaths. It was a great little living piece of history.
So let's go back to the history, because you said to me the Moore family even came earlier, right? When do you believe they arrived in America?
We think sometime within the Revolutionary time frame. My grandfather did a lot of research in his retirement looking into family history, wrote a very nice book about how to know your ancestors so that he could pass it down to his children and his grandchildren. And as he began to sort of pull the thread and go back, he found on the Moore side, on my father's side, that there had been men who had served in the military all the way back into the Revolutionary time. So that was a really neat gift that he gave our family that we still have and refer to, you know, every so often.
So let's go to Mom's side, okay?
Yep.
When did they come to America? Any idea?
That's a little more murky. We feel pretty confident that they were one of those immigrant families who had their name changed at some point to Americanize it. Her last name is Coons, spelled C-O-O-N-S. But we're pretty sure that when the original immigrant family came over, they were the Kuntzes, K-U-N-T-Z, but it was Americanized. Not sure exactly when the first member of the family came over. I do know her family grew up, and she grew up a little bit with her grandfather, especially during the war, in Elwood City, Pennsylvania, where he had a men's clothing business. And she has great fond memories of living there while her dad was.
So the haberdashery business, like, Harry Truman.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
Going back in
Exactly,
that situation.
yeah.
So let's go back to your great-grandfather on your father's side, and then we'll trace to you in a second, and also on the mom's side. Tell me about what great-grandpa do.
So he was an ambitious miner out west in Arizona and California, and had dreams of riches and dreams of finding that vein of silver. It was more of a silver strategy than it was a gold strategy. Unfortunately, was not successful. And when you're an unsuccessful miner, it's kind of a hard life. And with his sons, there were times he had to send the boys back east, or send one of the boys back east to live with family, because chasing after riches in the hills of Arizona and the far west was a very tough life. And so his son, my grandfather, spent a lot of time growing up in the Midwest with another branch of the family.
So tell me about Grandpa.
So my grandfather said sort of grew up on summers on a farm in Indiana, and he worked in a number of jobs, but served in the military in World War II. He was a young officer in the Army, served in the artillery in Europe. We've got a great photo, very sort of fuzzy, grainy photo of him somewhere in Europe that I really value and treasure, because it's a great piece of him as a young man and what he was doing at that time in his life. Like a lot of men who served in Europe, came back when the war was over, started a family.
And he went to Elkhart, Indiana at that time?
He was in northern Indiana. They lived in Elkhart. My dad was born in Elkhart, which is up in northern Indiana. And he went to work for the Studebaker Company, the car company in South Bend, Indiana, where he worked for about 10 years until Studebaker merged with another company. And they had what is now called downsizing or right-sizing, but they didn't have quite as genteel a term for it in the 1950s.
And he stayed in Elkhart?
No, he looked around. He wanted to stay in northern Indiana. Obviously didn't really want to move his family. But given the situation with jobs, he ended up moving his family to Texas, and they moved down to Dallas, Texas, where he worked for a short time for Texas Instruments in a corporate department, and then spent most of his career with the Southland Corporation down in Texas.
That was Grandpa?
That was Grandpa.
Okay,
yep.
Tell me about Dad.
So Dad was born when they were living in northern Indiana, born in Elkhart, Indiana. Went to school in Texas for most of his years. I think he was about 10 when the family moved down to Texas. And then attended Indiana University, where he met my mom. He was in his fraternity, she was in a sorority. They met. He graduated in 1965 and was a radio DJ for the first year after graduation. He had a communications degree and really was interested in radio in particular. This was obviously at the beginning, sort of early phases of the Vietnam War.
Was he in ROTC, or he?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. But he was coming out of school. He's now 23 years old. The war is on. And he volunteered to serve and entered service in the U.S. Air Force, went to officer training school with the intent of going in and serving, his tour and then going back to his radio career. As sometimes happens, you make plans, but life has other direction for you. He ended up spending 26 years and retired as a full colonel in the U.S. Air Force in 1992.
And he was in a variety of places, and many of them you were.
Yeah, which
right.
we all were.
Where was he at? Stationed
So
over the years?
He started his career in Ohio, where my older sister was born. He spent some time in Libya, spent a little bit of time in Greece, then came back to the U.S., began to get some advanced academic degrees, and went to the University of Denver, DU, and it was during that time when I was born, in the early 70s. Then we went to Northern Virginia, where he served in the Pentagon, came back to Colorado, where he taught at the Air Force Academy, spent a little bit of time in Alabama and Florida, a stint where he was going to school again, and another where he worked with the space program when the shuttle program was in its sort of full flower. Back to the Pentagon again in the mid-'80s, and then one more time back to Colorado, where he worked for NORAD and U.S. Space Command until his retirement.
Now, you said, I think Dad got his PhD also, right?
He did.
Right, and he was basically a communications specialist, expert.
Exactly.
Okay, now tell me about Mom's side, great-grandma, if you can go back that far and into Grandma.
So we go back to the family that I mentioned in Elwood City was the Connor family, which was my grandmother's family, and her dad was A.E. Connor, Addison Elmer Connor, who had the men's haberdashery in Elwood City, and so they had their family there, and my grandmother met my grandfather, again, I think in college. And after the war, when he was in the Army, they went back and lived in Elwood City with her parents, which I think a lot of folks did. And then after the war, they settled in southern Indiana, outside of Peoria, in a town called Washington, or in Illinois, I'm sorry, in Washington,
They stayed
Illinois.
in the clothing business, or they didn't?
No, the clothing business shut down, unfortunately. That was as cities began to grow and large department stores began to be where people wanted to shop, the smaller boutique men's clothing store in a small town in suburban Pittsburgh really couldn't survive that change. So when she married her husband, they moved down to Illinois, to Washington, Illinois. After the war, he went to work for a company that at that time was called R.G. Letourneau, which eventually was called the WABCO, or Westinghouse Air Brake Company. For those that know that part of Illinois, there's really two big employers. It's Caterpillar and WABCO. And he worked at WABCO through his retirement.
So now tell me about the kid who was born in Denver, right?
In Denver, yeah, in Denver.
Okay, so you were born in Denver, what,
1972.
Right, so tell me about growing up in Denver and all these other places that you traveled around.
We did move around a little bit. So I was born when my father was in graduate school. Was born at an Army base in Denver that, when it was first sort of started, was known as Fort 9 on the western frontier. So it goes back to that sort of 1860s, 1850s time frame. But was born out there. Shortly after his graduation, we moved to Virginia, where he was in the Pentagon serving in some of those sort of administrative roles at the Pentagon with the Department of the Air Force. Then around the time when I was after kindergarten, we moved back to Colorado. I did first and second grade while he was teaching at the Air Force Academy. Third grade was in Montgomery, Alabama, where we lived for 10 months while he went to the next stage of your officer education when you're a career military officer. Then it was fourth, fifth, sixth grade in Florida, in Satellite Beach, Florida, on the Space Coast, where, as I said, the shuttle program was really very new and very exciting. It was the school systems at that time basically had to acquiesce to the reality that if the shuttle was launching that day, kids were not coming to school. So they began to give vacation days. And we would go on the day of a shuttle launch and go and have a picnic. And this is a very sort of 80s story. And I remember distinctly sitting on a picnic blanket, the shuttle is off in the distance waiting to launch, and playing with a Rubik's Cube to keep myself occupied until the shuttle went off. And then the shuttle would launch, and it was amazing to see as a 11, 12-year-old kid. It's just sound and thunder and fire, and this thing rises up and goes off into the distance so you can't see it anymore.
Now, you didn't go with your dad to Libya, I assume.
No, he couldn't bring anybody to Libya. He had to go by himself. He had to leave. Right. Similar to my wife's experience when her father was in the Army during the war. She went to live with her parents with a brand new baby girl, my sister, when he was in Libya.
Yeah, you told me you had some interesting jobs when you were growing up. Tell me about some of them.
So I think the first job I had, I remember when I was very little, my parents had asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Sort of standard question you ask a young kid. And what they tell me I said, I don't remember this, they said I had two ideas. I said I wanted to either be a paper boy or a dinosaur. And I got to be a paper boy.
You told me, the Washington Post, right?
Washington Post. So this would have been when I was in middle school, so 7th and 8th grade, going into 9th grade. It was the kind of thing where you had to know the kid who had the route to inherit the route when he graduated from high school. And it was a great job. It taught a lot of discipline because the paper was delivered every day, 365 days a year, rain or shine, snowstorm or not. And we would get up in the morning, and every day except for Tuesday during the late 80s, the Washington Post had an insert. And so you would get the paper and you would get the insert, and before you could go deliver the papers, you had to assemble them.
Now, you don't realize that people in New York who worked in what we call candy stores had a similar situation. It was called the Saturday evenings.
Mm-hmm.
The part of the papers were delivered for the New York Times, and you'd have to put the different sections in.
Yep.
Because it wouldn't come the same way. So.
Exact same things. Tuesdays were a great day because Tuesdays were the day there was no insert, so the paper was the thinnest, so you could put more in your bag and get more done on fewer runs back to the house. So delivered that, and it was actually, I look back at it, my parents never said a word, but always on the days there were inserts, one of them would get up with me and help. And this was 4:30, 4:15 in the morning. I'd go out, I'd do my route, deliver the papers, and walk up. This wasn't sort of throw it in the driveway. This was walk up to the front door, put it on the stoop. Right. Had some folks who actually asked me, could you mind if you put it between the screen door and in the main door so that I don't even have to go outside. And so I would
So
even
you're
do
disciplined.
that. So it takes a little bit of discipline. And then Sundays we would drive around because the paper was so big. We would drive around the back of a station wagon and deliver them that way. So I achieved my first dream of being a paper boy. The dinosaur is probably going to have to wait for a while.
How did you decide to go to Notre Dame? I mean, you had the military background, but you didn't have the Fighting Irish background.
No, and it was one of those things that was kind of an interesting contrast, because having had some family roots in northern Indiana, in South Bend in particular, where Studebaker was, and having had both parents go to Indiana University, Notre Dame was sort of a rival. But it was one of those things that happens.
I've seen you at the Air Force Academy, as opposed.
That, I think, was probably knowing too much. Having been there, and when my dad was an instructor, and then having been there, it was maybe a little too close to home, and I knew it was a very tough program, and I really wanted to have a college experience that was probably more typical, if you will. And so had targeted some colleges that I was interested in, went on the tour, and Notre Dame wasn't at the top of the list. I really didn't know about the football history very much. I knew it was ranked well and had good academics. I thought I might want to be an architect or maybe an engineer. But went on the campus visit in the spring of my junior year of high school. And as we walk on the campus, it's sort of straight out of central casting. It's a beautiful spring day, and it's ivy and Gothic architecture, and the dome is there, and it's all very, very impressive. But as we walk in, there was a light pole on one of the walkways that was clearly off plumb. It had been knocked into by a golf cart or something else. And as we're walking into the administration building for our informational interview, we make a comment like, "Oh, it was probably some kid that hung on it last night and maybe was having too good a time." Go in for our interview, come out an hour later, and the light pole was gone. And I looked at my mother, who was with me at the time, and we said, "Wow, if they look after the kids and the students here half as well as they look after things like a light pole that's not straight, this must be a pretty special place." That popped it up to the top of my list. That and just the experience I'd had there. Was fortunate enough to be admitted and went there after graduation from high school in 1990.
What were you majoring in? Because, I mean, real estate wasn't in your mind. Construction wasn't in your mind.
I really loved buildings. I knew I liked building things. Had always enjoyed, sort of construction toys and Legos and those sorts of things. And had thought, at 18 at least, that architecture would be the sort of path for me. I learned fairly quickly in my freshman year that architecture was not going to be the path for me. There were certain skills on drawing and freehand that were not skills that I had in abundance. But I did have very good quantitative skills and analytical skills. And so fairly quickly within the first couple of months shifted majors into engineering, specifically civil engineering with a focus on structural engineering, which allowed me to stay in that realm of the built environment and things that I sort of had that visceral passion for.
What did you do during the summers? I know one summer you had the military, but before?
Yep. So summers, you were talking about jobs before. I worked in a record store during high school. And the first summer after freshman year, I worked in that same record store, which was great. So when it comes to sort of music trivia between, call it 1988 and 1992, I'm pretty solid.
See, and that's why vinyls are back.
Vinyls are back.
So here's the question. How do you decide to do Rotc? I mean, I know the tradition of the family, but did you always know you were going to join the military?
No, I really didn't. It was the kind of thing that... obviously, growing up in a military family, I knew a lot about it and knew what the experience was about, understood the values and what it meant to sort of serve your country and the concept of military service. And so it was always there in my mind, and obviously with the family history, I knew sort of what my grandparents had both done. But to my dad's great credit, there was never any pressure, there was never any discussion about, I really think you should do this. It was always in the sort of phrased as, I'll tell you what I know, I'll give you my perspective, but ultimately you need to decide what's best for you. And a combination of a scholarship opportunity to help offset the cost of college, which was pretty meaningful, and the chance to build on that history that I'd had with the Air Force led me to the ROTC.
So you graduate when?
1994.
And right after you graduate, you spend some years with the military, right?
I did.
How many years?
4 years on active duty.
Okay. Where were you stationed during that period of time?
In the United States, I was at McChord Air Force Base under Tacoma, Washington, a little bit south of Seattle for a couple of years. I also spent some time at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. For a couple of years. And during that time, spent 2 deployments to the Middle East, one in the summer of 1996 to Saudi Arabia, to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And then the fall of that year, led a team on about a month and a half long training exercise with the Egyptian military in Cairo, Egypt.
So it's 1998. How did you decide to go to Wharton?
If you're lucky in life, every so often you get a really good piece of advice. And if you're really lucky, you're smart enough to listen, you're smart enough to take it. And so as I was getting up to the end of my commitment, which was a 4-year commitment with the Air Force through ROTC, I was starting to think about what might be next. And I was thinking about going to graduate school to get a degree in construction management because I really loved buildings. I had the structural engineering background.
And you had the civil engineering degree.
And I knew that the buildings and construction was something that really I was drawn to. And we were out to dinner one night with a friend, a fellow Notre Dame alum and his family, and I was talking to his father, telling him my plans, and he said, well, I understand what you want to do, but maybe think about something different. Maybe consider going and getting an MBA, because you'll get a little bit of a broader education, and it might open your mind to some other possibilities. If you want to go do construction management after that, you certainly can, but it might be the kind of thing that opens up some doors that wouldn't happen. Really a just phenomenal, life-changing piece of advice if you think about the paths that happen going one route or the other. And so was admitted to the Wharton School and started there in the fall of '98.
Right, so you graduated Wharton in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the first company you went to?
Heinz.
No, it was Heinz, right, but in the summer, yeah.
Oh, in the summer. In the summer, Clark Realty Capital in Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Yep. Clark Construction is it's really the dominant construction company in the Washington, D.C. market. And they had started, a little bit before my summer internship, they had started a small development group that was doing opportunistic development. Young, they were working out of an office space that had been a Chinese restaurant the year before. And it was just a great summer to begin to learn some of the basic blocking and tackling of real estate development, how to look at a deal, how to underwrite a deal. And again, sort of little lessons that you find repeating later. One that I like to talk about, or one that I say frequently that I learned that summer, was we try to make this business a lot more complicated than it really is. And if you can keep your focus and keep your attention on 10 or 12 very specific things, you can be very successful. But the discipline is always maintaining your focus on those 10 or 12 very specific things.
So how did the discipline result in you finding a company out of Texas who was the world leader in real estate, Heinz organization?
That was, again, I think the good fortune of being at a place like Wharton where companies like Heinz would come and present. In my first year at Wharton, I had gone to a company presentation because this whole idea of real estate development was something I didn't really know or understand, but was starting to learn a little bit more about. And companies would come to present. I went to a presentation with one senior person there and one person who'd only been there about a year, and sat through it. They talked about what the firm did, how they approached development. And I went home that night and spoke to my fiance, now my wife, and I said, if I could have written what I want to do, it would have been pretty much exactly what those folks said tonight. And so from then on, I was pretty focused on Heinz and real estate development and trying to find a way to enter that world.
How many years with Heinz?
16.
And in different roles, where were you?
So I started my career here in New York on 745 7th Avenue, which was at that time Morgan Stanley's building, eventually became the Lehman Brothers building, is now the Barclays building. Worked also on fund and investment management with some of the investment vehicles that the firm sponsored. Did that for about 5 years. Worked in capital markets for 4 years, traveling the world, working with partners and prospective partners to fund projects and funds. And then spent the last 4 years of my career with Heinz in the Washington, D.C., the greater D.C. mid-Atlantic market, again, back in the frontline development business, which was where sort of my passion really was.
And at Heinz, you met a very nice guy by the name of Dan Rashin.
I did.
And what happens later on with Dan Rashin and you?
So again, there's being smart and there's being lucky, and I think meeting Dan Rashin at a certain point in my life was a pretty lucky event for me, because in about 2015, he called me to talk about what he was up to, where he was working at the Rockefeller Group, taking on the role of co-president and CEO, and some of the changes and some of the growth strategies that they had, and wanted to talk to me about possibly moving back. I had just moved my family 4 years before down to Washington, D.C., which was a big deal. And he knew it was going to be a big ask, but he thought it was worth the time to talk to me about it, explain it to me. And if it had been almost anybody else, I probably don't take that call. But because of the relationship that I had with Dan, how well he knew me, my implicit trust, and he's one of the truly good guys in our industry.
You come to Rockefeller as what?
as the head of what we call urban development, so development nationally of all the product types except for industrial.
Tell me what the Rockefeller Group is today.
Rockefeller Group today is a company that's really got two main businesses. We have what we like to call our core assets, which are based here in Manhattan. The Fortress assets on 6th Avenue, 1221 and 1271, where we're doing a large-scale renovation, as well as an investment in 745 7th Avenue, the first project I ever worked on. So there's a certain poetry and circular element to that. But we also have a robust development business.
Right, you're building on Park Avenue South, a condominium.
We're doing a condominium here in Manhattan. We've done some large-scale developments in Flushing, Queens.
Right, the major development in Flushing over there with F&T Group.
Exactly, exactly. We've got a robust industrial development business around the country,
right,
primarily
you have the
port
Ave,
strategy.
and you have some other things with the Corman communities in New Jersey over there.
We do. So when you look at Rockefeller Group today, our history goes back nearly 100 years. This year is our 90th anniversary, starting with the organization that developed Rockefeller Center. So we've got this amazing legacy. Where we are today is we are more active across geographies and product types on the development side than we've ever been. We've really begun what I like to think of as the next chapter in the legacy of this historic firm. And the runway we have in front of us is tremendously exciting. We've brought a lot of new people on.
And what happens in the early of 2018 with you and the Rockefeller Group? They make you...
They asked me to become president and CEO. As of April 1, I became president and CEO.
So let's talk about family. How did you meet your wife?
We met at Notre Dame.
And her name?
Her name is Wendy.
And she's from Patchogue, Long Island,
She is from Patchogue, Long Island.
Okay, and she stayed there. She didn't travel around the country growing up?
Well, she grew up in Patchogue. She moved once within town, and we met at Notre Dame. We actually, it took us a little while to get our act together. When I went west, she went east. I was serving in the military on the West Coast, and she was getting her graduate degree at Hopkins in Baltimore, but we eventually got it figured out, and we got married in 1999.
And tell me about the boys.
We have 3 boys, Connor, who is 15, Nathan, who's 12, and William, who's 7.
And you have the little guy, the dog.
And we have our dog Tracker.
Tracker, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, things take place you don't expect, okay? But one thing is the military background, the family tradition, and I know that you're going to be doing a great job at the Rockefeller Group, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's been great.